Scenario design or development is a crucial part of future casting. But there is some confusion surrounding the concept. Part of that confusion comes from the law of attraction principle that can be involved in scenario development. There are many different ideas floating around on just what this means, including a popular belief that if you visualize something long and strong enough, you will attract it to you. This involves creating vision boards with pictures of the things you want or places you want to go. If you want a yacht or dream of living in Hawaii, for instance, you place photographs of these goals on your vision board, essentially relying on the forces of the universe to draw them into your future. Sounds good. It's also nonsense. And in no way is the vision board rooted in reality. Years ago, Earl Nightingale made a profound comment, "You become what you think about." However, he did not say you will get what you dream about, especially if you're not working and doing anything. Just because you think of something or focus on it does not mean you will attract it into your life. On the contrary, if you sit your butt on the couch watching TV dreaming about being on MTV Cribs someday, it's not going to happen. Anything worth having is worth working for. Having success in any area of your life takes hard work, focus, vision, discipline, and determination. There is an alternative side of this story, however, which is a legitimate way to look at the laws of attraction. Success attracts success. People naturally gravitate towards others that have what they want. This does not just mean in a material sense either. It could be that successful people give off an aura of calm and happiness that others find attractive. In addition to this, there is a very pragmatic side to it. People want to tie their future to a proven winner. The more successful you are, the more people keep bringing opportunities to you. Now take Donald Trump as an example. No matter what you think of him, he's done a great job of building himself into a brand. Regardless of his many failures and bankruptcies, people still line up to try to do business with him. The Donald has so many offers from companies looking to attach themselves to the Trump brand that he has his own staff that does nothing but look at these deals and offers. All that said, scenario development isn't fantasy like those vision boards. It is rooted in all the lessons we have discussed so far, applying the various tools and disciplines objectively to create reasonable, realistic outcomes that could develop under certain circumstances. That sounds like a convoluted thought, but it'll begin to make sense very quickly. We want to look back at those 3 P's and a W. Your job is to understand how each of these directions could play themselves out in the future. Now, it's not about plotting a course on a graph, though. Your job is to uncover and understand how each of these options will look in the future. What will a possible future look like? What will a probable future look like? What will the preferable future look like? And what wildcards could come into play that could affect your future? We will answer each of these questions by using the intelligence we have gathered earlier and some creative writing or some creative thinking. Now, I'm not asking you to write fictional stories, but to use your knowledge, experience, historical analysis, and creativity to create scripts on how an event might play out. By creating different alternate futures, you can test different theories and ideas or what-ifs. You can role-play how different actions would have different consequences or outcomes. In all, we will ultimately have 5 scenarios playing themselves out: probable, possible, preferable, wildcard negative, and wildcard positive. In each of these scenarios, some of the same principles will apply. Each scenario needs to be looked at like a movie script, And the most important part is the end. In this case, it's the future that we are trying to forecast. There are lots of twists, turns, and subplots going on throughout. Every time we plug in a different variable, we have the potential to alter the future. The more variables you can think of and plan for, the better off you will be. This should be a fun exercise, but it's also critical. And the more you play the scenario out, the better your predictions. Here's a quick example. Think of chess players. Amateur chess players are thinking of the next move. What if my opponent does this? What if they do something else? How will I respond? Sometimes this works out, but it doesn't give them a very long-range view. On the other hand, when you look at a champion chess player, they're not thinking of the next single move. The prediction of the champion and the amateur is the same, winning the game. The goal, the prediction, has not changed. But the champion is looking forward 5 to 7 moves, predicting variable responses to each and every one of his moves and how he could respond in turn. It's the same future, a win, but with several different possible paths to reach that end. Each possible path is based on a different what if and the probable response of the opponent. What makes him successful is his ability to predict and respond to all of the variations. Again, several moves ahead of the current move that could occur in this process. That's how they're thinking. They understand the fluidity of the process of strategizing for the future and how thinking farther ahead will ultimately help predict the future more accurately. Hopefully, that gives you a good example of 2 things. 1, how being thorough with your predictions can mean the difference between an accurate prediction and one that is less accurate. And 2, how the process of playing out scenarios could ultimately become second nature, with practice of course, and be almost immediate. Like anything, the more you do it, the better and faster you should become at it. Now, let's get back to a scenario development step by step so you can see how to apply it to your own predictions. We will create 5 scripts in total, 3 based on the 3 Ps, and a pair based on wildcard possibilities. Let's start with the first P, probable. Let's think back to our commission salesperson from the previous session. This story will be based on everything going as usual, where things just aren't changing much. Remember, our salesperson was making 3% more every year, which pushed him to the $75,000 mark after 5 years. Based on that increase, the probable scenario was going to put him at just under $90,000 a year after the next 5 years. Essentially, the scenario will probably look the same for the next 5 years as it has for the past 5 years. Based on this scenario, you really do not have a lot to prepare for other than stability and 3% more money every year. There are some variations you could plan for, but realistically, the status quo is what you can expect. It's based on the idea that things will remain the same. It's stability. Scenario 2, possible. This scenario is based on the idea that things will not stay the same. That doesn't necessarily mean worse, but there will be change. And it's a scenario that requires us to look deeper than we did with the probable pathway. And it has more variables. The more variables, the better prepared you will be. Again, our salesperson from before. We calculated that the goal of reaching $250,000 per year was mathematically possible, but that change needed to occur in order to get off the probable pathway. So let's drill down into some variables to see how the possible scenario could play out. If we think objectively, We could say that you, the salesperson in this case, is falling behind because increases aren't keeping up with the company's growth or the industry's growth. So you're really underperforming in this scenario. One obvious possibility is a pink slip. So what is the plan to prevent this? Knowing that our goal is $250,000 a year within 5 years, or should it happen anyway, what is the response going to be again, considering the goal? This is where the story takes a fork in the road, and the possibilities really begin to branch out. So let's keep this simple and look at one pathway at a time. The first is, you begin taking the steps to hit the $250,000 mark. That means working harder to sell more, working more hours, etc., all the things you have to do. How does this affect your family? How does it affect your health? Does the money make it worth the time, effort, and negative consequences? Is the risk worth the reward? Another pathway. Let's say you begin sending out your resume to your contacts in the industry. Let's say there are 3 possibilities. 1, nothing happens. Second possibility, you get a new job. Or the third possibility, your employer finds out that you're out looking for a new job. 3 new pathways to investigate and build out. 1 is nothing, that's easy. The second one, you land a new job. There's a whole bunch of new what-ifs and questions. Does the new job present better opportunities? Does it require relocation? Does it require longer hours? Is the pay better? So it turns out this new job requires you to relocate your family. How does that impact your family or your personal life? How does it affect your cost of living in a different city? Can you sell your current house? You find out the company is less stable but offers a better commission structure, which could get you closer to your goal of making $250,000 a year. Each possibility opens up a new pathway or layer of possibility. In each layer, you have to ask, what now? What could happen? What should I do if it happens? This is how our champion chess player thinks, how they predict the future possibilities that link the current moment to the future goal. In the end, you should have a very in-depth view of the possibilities that will hopefully determine if the risk is worth the reward. But it's not that simple. We talked about several possibilities that could happen if you send out your resume. One is your employer finds out. What could this mean? This could motivate the employer further to terminate you. Or could it mean the employer reevaluates your value and takes steps to retain you? This opens up another layer. If he opts to eliminate you, what are your options for new work? Or can you take steps to rebuild the relationship before it's too late? Or would he reevaluate your importance and try to retain you? If you rebuild the relationship, is the employer looking at you as a long-term player, or is he thinking of you now as a short-term player? You can see how scenario building can be expansive when done right. It's like the branches of a tree, all the different directions a possible pathway can take with all of the branches and options. And while it may seem daunting on some level, remember the champion chess player who thinks several steps ahead in seconds or minutes. Scenario building can become second nature to you, so you can quickly run through all the possibilities of the various pathways. And consider, too, not every question or goal will have pathways that are so opposed to one another, like losing a job or keeping a job. Some will be simple and safe, where there isn't a whole lot of risk, or where the questions and answers are easy. What's more, with some possible scenarios, you'll be able to tell pretty quickly if they are even worth thinking through, or if they ultimately take you so far away from your goal that they just aren't worth pursuing. The biggest value in building out these scenarios to this degree, though, is knowing what you may expect in the future and whether or not you need to take steps to change it. you can determine various courses of action to reduce or stop negative events from impacting your life or business, or how to build on positive ones. Which brings us to the third and final P, the preferable scenario. This story will go just the way you want it. It's based on the idea that things are going to get better, not worse. This is my favorite scenario, by the way. We won't look at this as exhaustively as the possible scenarios, but a quick overview looks like this. Following the previous example, this may incorporate our salesperson getting a promotion, moving to an infinitely better job, and everyone in the family embracing the move, or the salesperson working the same amount of hours but becoming better and making more money all the same. With preferable scenarios, you need to determine what events or actions it will take to create your preferable scenario. What does our salesperson have to do to make the $250,000 annual salary a reality? You have to determine how to cause or contribute to these events taking place. The more specific, the better, so you can attach measurable action to the variables in the scenario. For instance, if you get 3 new orders a week, and to make more money you need 5, you know you have to work to get 2 more orders each week. If you do that, you'll be on pace to make more money. The minutia of this scenario will probably be as in-depth as the possible scenario, growing out like tree branches and sub-branches. Now, the final scenarios we're going to do are the wild cards. We've talked about wild cards being the low probability but high impact events. Most everyone thinks of wild cards as doomsday, end of the world events, but in fact, wild card scenarios are the most fun and creative scenarios to actually work on. Think about all of the movies that have been created about wild card predictions. War of the Worlds, Day After Tomorrow, The Day the Earth Stood Still, Knowing. The list is endless. Wild card scenarios allow us to unleash our creativity. Now, wild cards can be miracle scenarios too, and the movie world has no shortage of these either. So you think like Forrest Gump, Rocky 1 through, Rocky 50, Flashdance, and we go on and on. It's human nature to love wild cards. My recommendation is that when you are developing your scenarios, you create 2 wildcard versions, the disaster scenario and the miracle scenario. A disaster scenario is different than a possible scenario. With the possible model, we will look for ways to prevent the negative event or at least mitigate it. In the case of a wildcard disaster model, we most likely have no ability to prevent it. Our job here is to find the things that we can and will do to deal with it. As the U.S. Marines say, innovate, adapt, and overcome. So think of wildcard scenario building as constructing a contingency plan. What would you do in the event of ... of whatever? A negative example is this. Say you sell a product that's manufactured in China, but you start seeing red flags. Pirate activity is suddenly increasing near the shipping lanes. Will a pirate attack your container ship? Now, who in the world would have ever thought we'd be sitting here talking about pirates? But it's a reality. That's unknown. It's a wild card. But red flags tell us it might happen, and you should have a contingency in place. Maybe you have to have some products flown over, so there's backup inventory. Maybe you start sourcing alternative manufacturers. Regardless, you need a contingency that accounts for the possible negative wildcards that could devastate your business or personal life. Now, positive wildcards can be just as important to plan for. Same deal. You have a product for sale, and Oprah brings it on her show and says she loves it. Minutes later, your phone is ringing off the hook. Orders are coming in numbers you had never planned for. What do you do? What's your contingency plan now? Imagine all of the possibilities. If you were to examine the life of any highly successful person, no matter what your interpretation of success is, you will likely find one or more of these miracle events took place. The value in defining and refining them in advance improves your ability and likelihood of accurately identifying them when they happen, so you can grab them and run with them as fast as you can. One footnote is that not all miracles can be planned for in advance, such as my finding a 5-day-old baby girl in Guatemala that became my beautiful daughter, or the fact that a woman that really disliked me became the driving force of much that I have accomplished, and she is now my amazing wife. Neither would have happened had I not been prepared to seize those opportunities. But many of these miracles can be planned for. It is when these wild card events meet up with the person prepared to react to them that the miracles take place. My life has been filled with these chance events, from the people I have met, the clients that came in the door, the opportunities that have presented themselves. All of them specifically unpredictable, but all of them readily identifiable. It is these miracle events and your response to them that will be the defining moments in moving your life from ordinary to extraordinary. One final thought on wildcard events. When developing your what-if scenarios, do not forget to account for how these events will affect those around you. Your friends and family may not respond in the way you would first think, and that might alter possible pathways. In fact, they could become wild cards within the possible and preferable scenarios. I've had the experience of losing everything in the past and watching as those people who claimed to be my friends quickly disappeared. That same experience gave me the incredible blessings of learning who my real friends were too. On the other hand, I have had surprising and unanticipated reactions to great success from friends and even family that you would expect to be happy for you. Instead, I found that sometimes my success was disliked, that some thought of me as a lotto winner, even though I don't play the lotto, and some thought it was unjust for me to have more success than they did. My own thoughts on this is that when you outperform those close to you, your success acts as a mirror, making them see all of the things that they're not doing. Will this happen to you? It's a wild card, but one that may have red flags for you to identify. The bottom line is that wild card events, good or bad, will change your life, so be ready. Now you know how to forecast and identify the future, but who wants to wait around for it to get here? As Yogi Berra said, the future just ain't what it used to be. I have said several times during this program, the best way to predict the future is to go out and create it. In our next session, we're going to do just that. You will learn how to live your future right now.